Good afternoon, and welcome to the Council on Foreign Relations and to our meeting with the President of Iraq, Barham Saleh. You'll also know President Saleh as one of the most articulate voices for the Iraqi people and a very important interlocutor with the international community. And this is largely, I'd say, a reflection of his inherent optimism and his problem-solving nature. President Saleh also is known as one of the people who has been able to rise above the sectarian and ethnic strife and the identities that have often characterized post-Iraq or post-Saddam Iraqi politics. And there are many manifestations of this, and I would say the one that I remember most vividly is going to his house in the summer of 2007. This was a moment when Iraq was in the Asian Cup finals for soccer and was playing Saudi Arabia, ultimately winning the Asian Cup finals. And President Saleh had a gathering in his house. This was 2007, a period of intense political polarization and violence in Iraq. And when I arrived, I was surprised to find people from all walks of the political spectrum. There were Sadrists, there were Shia Islamists, there were secular Kurds, there were Sunnis. This, of course, is a little bit a reflection of the game of soccer, but I'd say it is a greater testimony to the man who is now president of Iraq. So I'd like to welcome His Excellency President Barham Saleh to the podium.
Thank you for this wonderful introduction, and it's truly an honor to be back at the Council on Foreign Relations. I used to visit the Council in the past quite frequently, and I want to pay tribute to Les Gelb, who used to be president before my good friend Richard Haas, and who passed away, a man of great vision and commitment to a better Middle East. I'm here today and also having the opportunity of seeing many friends whom I have not been in touch for a while. Things have been quite busy in my part of the world, but nevertheless it's wonderful seeing many familiar faces in this crowd today. I'm here to attend the United Nations General Assembly, leading the Iraqi delegation, and to present to the world a status report about Iraq and about our vision for the future of our country. Many of you who have been dealing with the Iraqi situation and have been helping the cause of the Iraqi people to overcome the tyranny of Saddam Hussein must have been disappointed, pained by the difficulties of transition and the many setbacks that we have suffered over the years. Certainly Iraqis were pained, were disappointed, and were hoping for much better and much quicker transition. To put things in context, Iraq has been in a state of conflict for the past 4 decades, at least for the past 4 decades, probably a lot longer. But from the onset of the Iraq-Iran war, the invasion of Kuwait, the sanctions, 2003 upheavals, the onslaught of terrorism, not to mention the tyranny of Saddam Hussein and the war of genocide that he has committed, and the mass graves to which many, many Iraqis were condemned across the country, are but few highlights of the difficult years that Iraqis have endured. Probably no other country in the world have gone through such extended and profound conflict. And therefore, we need to assess the status of Iraq, the situation in Iraq in that context. Today, we are, I believe, at a turning point in Iraq, potentially a historic turning point. The defeat of ISIS is a remarkable achievement. It's a significant achievement, and I want to remind this august audience that a few years back, ISIS was in control of at least 1/3 of Iraqi territory. There were moments of despair that ISIS was about to sweep through Baghdad. And today, Iraq is largely free from ISIS. This has been an epic struggle. Iraqis were in the forefront of that battle against the evil of ISIS and terrorism. We were able to achieve this important victory with the help of the international community and the international coalition led by the United States, a help and an assistance for which we are very grateful. But I want to also say the military defeat of ISIS, the territorial defeat of ISIS is significant, is serious, is tangible, is to be celebrated, is to be recognized, not to be underestimated. But at the same time, I have to emphasize, mission is yet to be accomplished. And we have seen this movie before, where we fall complacent after the territorial or military defeat of an insurgency or a terrorist onslaught, only to be rudely awakened later on with another manifestation, another mutant of these terrorist and extremist problem that is still around us in the Middle East. There are remnants of ISIS, probably in excess of 10,000 people between Syria and Iraq that need to be taken care of and needs to be pursued through security and military operations, which we are doing. But there is also, more dangerously, many places in Syria and elsewhere across the Middle East which harbor terrorists. I call them the Torah borders of the Middle East, not to be complacent about it. And some of these groups that are being harbored in these Torah borders are really nothing but variations of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and we need to be careful. There is also the fundamental factors that lead to the rise of extremism and make our young people prey to extremist ideology and the terrorist organizations. Unemployment, broken education systems, IDP camps, people who have not gone back to their homes. These are all incubating environments for the kind of terrorist and extremist groups. We need to be very careful about those. Obviously, Iraq has a long way to go before we can address some of these fundamental problems through economic regeneration and creating job opportunities for our population. There is another factor, a fundamental factor. The broken region of the Middle East, the rivalries, the regional rivalries between the various actors in the Middle East have often produced cracks in the system. These cracks, extremist organizations and terrorist organizations have been able to go through and manipulate to their advantage. This is also a major, major problem. Iraq is in the heart of the Islamic Middle East. Mesopotamia has often been the place where the regional order is defined for millennia. So the outcome of the struggle in Iraq is of consequence not only to the Iraqi people, but I dare say to the wider Middle East as well as to the world. What are we doing about those? But before I come to that, I want to say perhaps the last few months, the last year or two, Iraq's stability is real, tangible. Iraq's self-assurance and self-confidence is real, is getting stronger. Sectarian and ethnic politics is becoming less relevant to our political discourse. These are important indicators of a positive story that is emerging from Iraq. And the very fact that these days we do not have Iraq in the headlines as much as they used to be, perhaps, is quite a statement that things in Iraq are going in the right direction. My description of our situation today, that the situation in Iraq is not good. Iraqis deserve far better than what we have today, but in no doubt, the situation in Iraq is getting better. There is no denying that the status of Baghdad today is far better than what it was a year ago or 2 years ago. I was with a former American ambassador who served in Baghdad for an extensive period, and we were talking about the situation of Iraq today, much of Iraq today, and he agreed with me that this would have been celebrated as a major success, and the United States would have recognized it as an American success. But somehow this is lost on people. I know the reasons. Perhaps good stories are not capturing attention as bad news, but also I know the dynamics of U.S. foreign policy and the priorities, and perhaps the fatigue that people have about Iraq, and now the focus on the Iran dynamics and other issues that is diverting attention from this emerging reality of Iraq. I say to you, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a very important group of foreign policy experts, friends of Iraq and the Middle East, the success in Iraq is real, tangible, but very, very fragile. And we need to nurture it, to protect it, to make sure it is not squandered. What should we do about it? The major onus is on us as Iraqi leaders, as the Iraqi state, as the Iraqi government. We have an ambitious plan in order to turn this corner and really push Iraq in a positive trajectory, and really, instead of Iraq being condemned to this cycle of instability and being a place where regional actors fight their wars and through proxies, often with our own money and with our own lives, we want to turn it into a hub, a bridge between the actors of the neighborhood. This is easier said than done. I do say that the Middle East is a broken region, like much of Europe it was in the early part of the 20th century, East Asia, Latin America, many other parts of the world that were fixed through a number of initiatives and creating interdependencies that overcome political differences. I would say the difficulties of Iraq and the potential of Iraq could be turned around for the sake of the Iraqi people, but also for the wider Middle East. Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi, a friend, and an economist, a reformist, is keen on helping regenerate Iraq's economy. Because in my meeting with President Trump 2-3 days ago, I told him, like the United States, we in Iraq also need jobs, jobs, jobs for our kids. We are a rich country. We have huge resources, but we also have huge needs. With good leadership, with good governance, we can combine these two into creating possibly one of the largest emerging markets across the world. To this end, the Prime Minister and I are co-sponsoring legislation to Iraqi Parliament, hopefully will be submitted very soon, to set up a construction commission. And I can go on and on talking about this vision. It's somehow simple. We're creating a construction fund. 5%, we're proposing that 5% of Iraqi revenues will be put into this fund every year, and will create a structure led by the government, led by the Prime Minister, with independent commissioners to implement major infrastructure work. Imagine, ladies and gentlemen, deep port facilities in Basra. Imagine railway systems connecting Basra to the Turkish borders and connecting to Europe. Imagine highway systems and networks, airports that will be partly funded by the Iraqi treasury, but open to investment from equity funds, sovereign funds from across the world, utilizing streamlined operations to enable the implementation of these projects. I understand that Iraqi bureaucracy is problematic, it is painful, and what we have devised in accordance with this legislation, or draft legislation, is to really bypass some of these impediments to enable international investment to come in to work on these mega projects, infrastructure work. And this can be within Iraq, of course, initially, but ultimately could help bring the region together. We're working with our neighbors, we're working with the Jordanians, with the Egyptians, with our Gulf neighbors, with the Saudis, with the Kuwaitis, with Iran, with Turkey, to really developing a better interconnectivity and interdependency between the nations of that part of the world. We genuinely want to give our neighbors a stake in the stability of our country, instead of everybody fighting their way through some outdated, outmoded notions of conflict and regional rivalry. Let us really work and focus on what is important. Iraq today is home to 38 million people. Almost 70% of our population is below the age of 30. Youth unemployment is a real political, social, and security challenge. And we simply cannot go on like this. That is applicable to other nations in our neighborhood with the huge resources that we have, with the population that is talented and entrepreneurial that we have. My hope that we can turn the corner and really turn Iraq from an icon of instability, war, repression into something a lot better. I know it's difficult. I know is many of you would think this is a pie in the sky. It's definitely a dream, but we have the determination to pursue it, and I certainly look to our friends in the United States and in this room to be helpful to us as we try to achieve that basic right for our people. Thank you very much.